We're very happy to have with us today Randy Johnston, one of my favorite jazz guitarists for such a long time. Randy has been playing with his own groups for a number of years, and now he's based in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I first heard Randy when he played with Lou Donaldson at the Village Vanguard, but he's also worked with people, Lonnie Smith, as well. And I know he's done some work with Houston Person. He plays with his own trio, but he also plays organ trio as well. So, Randy, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Oh, you're so welcome, Abe. Nice to see you today, and hello to the audience out in blog land.
Yeah. Hello to the audience that will be watching this momentarily.
Good.
So, Randy, I know we kind of crossed paths at one point, maybe when you were living in Charlottesville, and now you're down in Myrtle Beach. And I know you've had to kind of like drift away a little bit from, playing jazz as regularly as you were and going into, singing and playing more rock stuff. When you play these other types of gigs, does it give you that same release that you would get, say, playing with an organ trio, or do you kind of feel like it's a different headspace?
It's well, I mean both. It's that doesn't make any sense, but actually, I started out as sort of a rock and roller. I mean, my generation is not the jazz generation. And neither is yours. But you're younger than I am. But mine, I started out playing playing like Eric Clapton and BB King, and I was trying to play like Jimi Hendrix, but I didn't know that he tuned the guitar down to E flat most of the time. So that really perplexed me for a long time. But now I know that if you just take a Strat and turn it up all the way and tune it down to E flat, it'll sound just like Jimi Hendrix. But I always liked singing, which I did not do for years. When I was a little kid in Detroit, where my parents lived when I was born there, my dad used to take me around to radio stations, to remote radio stations, which were always at car dealerships. And I would sing a song on the radio like a cute little kid. I'm sure it sounded horrible,
We got to
but
find that somewhere. I want to hear that.
I don't think hopefully it's not available, and then I started playing, and I got, and Detroit, it was such a macho kind of place. It still is, and in a good and bad ways, but it's okay if you're just like blasting away on some power chords on the rock and roll guitar, but singing, that's kind of like it's so I just stopped singing for a long time, and then I was, at the University of Miami, and then we moved back to Richmond, Virginia, which is where my father's from, and I was playing gigs all the time then, and I went to the University of Miami, and then I went to New York, and I was there for many, many years. That's where I met you and had lots of different great gigs with all these great jazz musicians, and made all these jazz albums and everything. And then about 15 years ago, I started singing again, and I did it some in New York. I had I sort of had like an alter ego. I would play like over at I'd play at the Vanguard and the Blue Note, playing jazz, and then I'd play over in the East Village, at banjo gyms and places like that, doing my blues rock thing. So I mean, moving to Charlottesville, which was near where I grew up, I kind of got into doing that and trying to combine the two together. And I had this great group with this organ player named Jonah Kane West for a couple of years, who's from down there, and then moving down here to South Carolina. Now I can actually do both because I play jazz sometimes, and then I have my other thing. But it's really fun, to do that, and it's sort of my roots, and that's all related to the blues, and country music is related to the blues too, which is one thing that Houston Person and Etta Jones told me, and Lou Donaldson told me, that, and they're all Southerners. They're from North and South Carolina, all three of them, and they told me that, that Southern music is all related. Country music and blues and jazz is all related. So I mean, of course there are differences in it, but I'm really enjoying myself now
You
doing
know,
all.
that's what life's all about. Just, life's hard, and I always say life's hard enough, and being an artist is hard enough. So just enjoy it. That's, I'm, finally kind of starting to learn how to do that. And you mentioned, Lou, and you mentioned Houston. And I know you've worked with, Joey DeFrancesco and Lonnie Smith, two of the most spectacular organists of our time. and
Yeah.
and I'm sure like not every experience was different in its own way, but one thing I wanted to ask you was if if you could go back, was there like, and it's one performance and it's like Groundhog Day, you have to relive that night over and over and over again, like, is there any like one show or something that kind of sticks out to you that you can think of, or even
Would
just
that be
with your own band, even anything like that?
would that be the best or the worst?
The best, of course.
Okay. I don't know. No, I mean, nothing really. They're all, many of them stick out, and many performances at the Village Vanguard were really great because, and also I mean, I played with Joey D and I played with Lonnie, and I also played with McDuff and
Right,
McGriff,
right.
Rhoda Scott and Shirley Scott, and I used to play down in Philly all the time, with Mickey Roker and Shirley Scott and Arthur Harper on bass. And so, I mean, I played with a lot of any of the organ players that were alive during my time in New York, which was from, the early 80s up until 2015, I played with. And with the exception of Jimmy Smith, and I knew Jimmy Smith, personally, and he was always very nice to me, which is, he was a cantankerous character, but
I've heard stories.
yeah, but and I mean, when I first came to New York, I had a gig playing an after hours club from 5 to 9 in the morning, and I played on the street for a couple of years because I didn't know anybody. The only person I knew in New York was this bass player, Nat Reeves, who's one of my best friends from Virginia.
From Connecticut, and he's in Connecticut, I believe, right? The
He's
Hart
been in
School.
Connecticut for many years, but he's from Lynchburg, Virginia. And I knew, we used to play together down in Richmond, and I knew him, but I didn't know anybody else. And then, I played a little with McDuff, and I played. One of my first really favorite gigs was with Warren Marsh, the saxophone player Warren Marsh, and I played a little bit with Lee Konitz too. And but I played in Warren Marsh's band for 3 years, um, and that was really different than things that I did before or things that I've done since, which were more of the, toward the bluesy side, the groovy side, bluesy, funky, blue notes and stuff like that, which he had some of those too, but that was really a person that I learned a whole lot from and really enjoyed playing with. We had a pianoless quartet, and we played a lot together. So I mean, those were some of the great. I had so many great experiences in New York, and also playing not only great gigs but really shitty gigs too.
Oh, I get it.
I played restaurants, and I played like, weddings, bar mitzvahs on Long Island, and and I mean, I learned something from every one of those gigs. I mean, like I would go on at first I would go on these real cheap like club date gigs, like at weddings and stuff, and they'd go like, all right, now we're gonna play the Mexican hat dance, and well, I don't know the Mexican hat dance, and they just start playing it, and you better know it by the second chorus, or you're fired. and that's the same thing that when I got in Lou's band, that was the same exact. I mean, he didn't play the Mexican hat dance, but he would, I didn't know anything. Like not only would he not tell me what the name of the song was or what key it was in, but he wouldn't even count it. He wouldn't even go one, two, three, four. He'd just like take his horn and start playing, and hopefully I knew it, and but if I didn't know it, I'd better know it by the second or third chorus, or the next time they would just have like somebody else on the
When he would do that, just start playing and you didn't know it. Now, was that did that because I've had situations with that happening, and I'm like, I get scared, you know. Did you look at it as like, oh, this is going to be fun, or is it like, oh shit, like I have to like really pay attention right now? Because there's two ways it can go.
Yeah, no, oh shit, I really have to pay attention because, but I mean that teaches you to really listen, really listen to it, and a lot of times it's not. It's not it's not as hard as you think it would be. I mean, if it's a regular kind of standard or something, it's going to be probably 8-bar phrases, and it's going to end up on the tonic, at the end, the one chord. So and then you kind of know that the chord before that is probably going to be some kind of 5 or 2/5, and then you sort of work your way backwards and fill in the chords as you go through a couple of choruses. So
So a lot of like AABA type stuff, and like it was that the songs were in that realm, so to speak.
yeah, they were in that realm. They weren't they were not they were not
Like
original.
along came Betty or something like that. Like
And
or was it?
sometimes it would be something like that, but it would
Whoa.
never be like, usually not, usually much simpler than that, but never like, the modern jazz cats they play and they're, and it's almost like a through composed thing with, a chart that looks like, a diagram for a lunar landing or something like that. It wasn't that, it was so.
I do you think that, because a lot of the jazz today, it's all about, like the things you're talking about, but then it goes into like time signatures we can't count and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I don't know, I've always looked at it like, oh, this is like is it they're are they just, it's almost like they're trying to be too clever versus like it's okay to play standards and it's okay to play swing. And do you feel that, that it's almost becoming like, is it still there where it was, like that people still want to play that way, or is it just where it's everyone's just kind of doing their own thing?
I don't really know because you would know better than I because I've been out of New York for almost 10 years now, so I don't really know.
Yeah, I wanted to go to NYU. One of the reasons was to study with you, and I
Mhm.
think I think you like you had just weren't teaching there anymore, so I didn't get a
Yeah,
chance to. But
yeah, I stopped in 2015. Yeah, yeah.
did you like teaching at NYU?
Sure. I mean, I liked it a lot. I mean, I taught when I was in the New York area, I taught at three places over the years. One was the Hart School of Music up in Hartford, Connecticut, under Jackie, and Jackie McLean was my boss,
Oh
and
my goodness.
Matt Reeves was there. He was the one that got me the gig. And then I also taught at SUNY Purchase, which is up in Westchester County, which is a state school, but that probably was the strongest program as far as the faculty and everything and the consistency of it. And then I taught at NYU, which was great because and at first I taught only jazz guitar students, and they were um, really talented people like yourself who would, they would come over and they would already know all the basic stuff, the Borean mode and the
Symmetrical, diminished, and
yeah,
all
the
that.
symmetrical demolished scale and all that kind of stuff. So I mean that was great. But then the last few years, the other two gigs I kind of quit doing, and I was teaching all just general guitar lessons, and so I mean, some of the people that would come in, we would start with, well, do you hold the guitar like this way or do you hold it that way? I mean, it was, and I found that in a way much more challenging and in a different way, just just as fun to do. So yeah, I liked it. I mean, and then and then and then of course the last couple of years I taught at NYU, I taught right in the Catholic Student Services building, which is right on Washington Square Park, right in the heart of the village where all the jazz clubs are, and all, I knew everybody at all those places. So after I was in there for like 5 or 6 hours teaching lessons, I would just go out to all the jazz clubs and just I'd say, oh, I think so and so's over at the 55. I'll just go over for 10 minutes. And then the next thing I knew, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on the subway, and it was very fun, but hard on the liver and the bank account.
I
So
know I believe it. I'm in New Jersey now. I lived in New York for about 6 months, but I was like, yeah, this can't if it can keeps going this way, this is not going to turn out good. So I might as well make my exit while I can and just kind of be more in a suburban area. Uh,
yeah, yeah. Well, I lived mostly when in my time in New York and in Brooklyn near Park Slope, which is a great place to live, and not very far away. But when I would teach at NYU, those couple of days, I'd be in the West Village, and it was great. I would sometimes I'd look over in a couple of we'd be in these little cell practice rooms, and I'd look over a couple of cells away, and it was Don Friedman was in there teaching piano, and he's like 85 years old, and if there was snow and ice out, I'd see him like hobbling to the subway and
oh
everything.
man.
I'm thinking like, man, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be here forever. So,
No, I get it. And you know, when you were at Purchase, was John Abercrombie there too, or was it?
oh yeah, yeah. John had been a good friend. First, John was like, of course, one of my idols when I was growing up, and I had all of, I'd go down to the record shop in Richmond and buy all his ECM records as soon as they came out, and then later on, when I was in New York, Jack Wilkins introduced me to him, and we became really good friends. John was really, really nice guy, really super nice guy, as well as completely fabulous and groundbreaking player. But yeah, he was right down the hall from me at SUNY Purchase, so I'd see him on breaks, and we'd talk and all. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so like I watched an interview with him. It's so funny. He's like because he's talking about sight reading, and he's like, and then there's sight reading, which no guitar player knows how to do. Like, and I like he would he said,
Only Joe Cohn.
but yeah, John was a legend and one of my favorites, and that's so cool. You guys got to hang out. We're good friends. I never got to interact. I got to see him play. But he always struck me as like a serious cat. But he sounds like he was really nice. You're saying.
It's really nice. And when I first met him, it was sort of back in the early days of the MIDI thing, MIDI guitars and MIDI studios, and he was really into all that stuff. And that stuff in those days, it was big boxes of stuff. It wasn't just like an app on a phone or something. So I would go over to his loft, which was in Chelsea somewhere, and we would play tunes together, and we'd go into this room where he had this like all of this massive amount of like MIDI stuff, and he had like digital piano where you'd play the guitar through it and it would sound exactly like a grand piano.
Oh, like so the guitar sounded like a piano, like he had
It,
that
it
thing.
sounded, he'd go, "Oh man, you got to hear this, my digital piano." And you play through it, and it sounded just like a real grand piano. And we go in there, and play tunes and fool around and stuff. And then, so I knew him before. And then when I started teaching at Purchase, he was there also, and he was right down the hall, so I would see him then.
That's so cool. I also wanted to ask you about, you have these, like you're saying, when I got to play with certain people, it's like it is like, for instance, when Lou Donaldson would throw the tunes at you without saying anything. Um, do you have any, and playing at the Vanguard is no easy task either, I would assume. Do you have any like pre-performance like rituals or superstitions, or you just like to go out there, or do you need to practice a certain amount, anything like that going on?
I don't really do that now. Although if I'm going to a gig where I'm singing songs, like last night I did the solo gig and I sang all night, and played. And so I'll do a few vocal warm-ups in the car before that, just because I've been singing relatively less time than, on gigs than I have been playing guitar. So, but I don't really do any like guitar warm-ups like scales or anything. Although, I mean, that being said, I have a house now where I never lived in a house before in my life. Since I lived with my parents, they had a house. I grew up there, but all the cities I lived in, including Charlottesville, I had apartments. So I had neighbors on either side of all the sides of the walls. Now I have a house. So after the gig, I can come back and I'll practice the things that I fucked up on the gig, which are always, there's always things that I messed, that I made mistakes. So I can go back and practice that. I'll probably do that tonight. And now I'll still practice and play like hours a day, lots of times when I'm not working. So it's a lifetime thing. But one interesting thing that Houston Person taught me was that a lot of times if I had a gig with him, if it was, and I remember if we'd be in the dressing room before the gig, or sometimes he'd rent like one hotel room so that we could all just have a place to chill out before the gig,
Oh, that's cool.
and if I'd be in there and I'd have my guitar and I'd be like practicing scales or something like that, he'd go, "Man, save them notes for the gig," so he was a believer in just playing exactly, what you hear at the time of the gig, rather than, because doing, yeah, basically you play at the gig what you practice. Whatever you practiced, that's what you're going to play on the gig. So so if you practice scales all the time, when you get on the gig, you're going to play scales.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Hmm.
so he kind of, so I took that to mean that maybe the day of the gig, if it's especially if it's a gig where I'm trying to play some songs that I don't know as well as some other ones, maybe I'll just like go over the melodies on the guitar, or go over the lyrics if I'm singing the song, but I won't like really practice it for hours. And also, I mean, I have lots and lots of recording experience, doing, did 14 albums of my own on 5 different labels, and a bunch of other ones as a side musician. And what I would do at first, um, when I went into the studio, is I'd say to myself, "Oh well, oh my God, now this is a going to be a record, and it's going to last forever, for all be in musical posterity or history. so I have to play the very best I've ever played and play all my best licks and play the best solo I've ever played in my life, and it would end up always sounding like the worst I could play. The worst.
When you treat it like life or death, that session.
Absolutely the worst that it would be the worst I could play. So after a while, and there again, like Houston, who is my producer on a bunch of my early records, he would say like, "Oh man, don't even worry about the solos. The solos aren't the most important thing. It's the record. How the vibe of the record and the arrangement and not having it too long and all this kind of stuff like that. Don't even worry about the solos." So solo never sold any jazz record. So which is just the opposite of what you hear in music school. I mean, it's like you're transcribing this Coltrane solo, and you're getting into this minutia of the this substitute this line or whatever. It's totally different. So I got to just approaching it as like I'm just going to play whatever I feel like, and I'm just going to try to play something that's just representative of me and not the best or not the worst, and just let it go, and then it would sound just like I sounded. It would be, and which was okay. I listen back to them now, and I think, well, that's it's pretty good.
Yeah, I
So
think I think a lot of artists, including myself, like that's the biggest struggle, like letting go of that need to be, you know, almost perfect, I guess. But it's a
right, right,
lifelong thing, I think. I don't know. I'm
right. Well. Do you know who George Barnes was?
I've heard the name, yeah.
George Barnes was an old time like swing guitar player. He was really really great player, great musician, and he said that a lot of times things are great, but they're not any good. So so in other words, great in the sense of great. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's like huge, large, epic, great. Oh, I had a there's the greatest mountain range. It's the biggest, but something can be great. You can be playing all this stuff, and but it's not any good. It's not musical. So I mean, I guess ideally something is good and great, maybe, but great doesn't just mean a better version of good.
Yeah, no, no, I think you're totally right.
and and not
And
any good. So
what I mean, what make for you? What makes the gig like? Oh yeah, that was good. Like or versus that was at the peak, just the way it felt. I mean, is it that everyone in the band is just kind of on like the same level of consciousness or something, or is it just like the way the volume? I mean, it's almost a mystery, I think.
yeah, it's that all is part of it, but I go for the audience. If
The
the
audience.
audience, if the yeah, I don't. I actually don't. I mean, yeah, I am an artist and all that, but I consider myself an entertainer and a troubadour more than an artist.
Hmm.
And that first, and then maybe an artist second. Like so, if if you if I go to the gig and the audience is really into it and really pleased, and there's a lot of them there, and they're happy and they're spending a lot, if it's a bar or something, if they're spending a lot of money and buying a lot of food and drinks, and the club owner is real happy, then I'm happy, and the best compliment I've ever had, I think, and I've had a lot of good compliments, but is something like, people come up to me and they said, I never thought I liked jazz, but I like I like what you're doing. If that's jazz, I like it, So that's to me, and a lot of that stuff I learned from Houston also, and from Lou Donaldson also,
Yeah,
just
rest his soul. He just, passed.
yeah, I
I'm sorry
know.
I know you were close with him. I'm really sorry to hear about it, especially for your relationship with him and everything. So,
Yeah, well, I've been talking to him pretty regularly, and I just called him a few days ago, and he didn't call me back, but I'd talked to him a couple months ago, and I heard from Fukushi, the drummer, Fukushi Tainaka, who's also he's like my brother. We played together so many times, and we played with Lou for longer than I did. I played 18 years, Fuku like something like 34 years. So
that's loyalty. I mean,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, loyal. Lou is a very loyal guy, and he didn't have his like you see that, oh, this is my organ trio project. Now I'm going to do my Indian music project. Now I'm going to, it was just the same shit all the time. And if he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't like you, he didn't like you. So there's a lot to be said for that. But I mean, he was 98 years old. Fuku told me that he had had a really nice dinner with his granddaughter Tracy the night before.
Hmm.
Tracy's a lawyer down in Tallahassee, Florida, and she's a really nice lady. And I was friends with her too. And so, I mean, I think if it was one of the it was a life well lived. We never want anything to end. But
He would. I played a jam session at Smoke, and he was just in the audience, just hanging out, like
yeah,
listening. It was just he
oh
was
yeah.
cool. Like,
Yeah, no, he would. Even when he was in his 80s, and I don't know when it really ended, he would go out almost every night just to listen to music. Like if I had a gig, even if it was at like Garage or something, that place in the
oh, I
village,
know Garage very well.
my friend. But a lot, I'd look up and see him sitting at the bar, or at Smoke, and he had like his Tuesday night place and his Wednesday night place and his, and I'm not a big hanger outer, really. I don't, I'm a sociable person, but it's all learned, it's all forced. I'm not really, basically I hate people and all that. So basically. So not really, but I mean, I'm not a real. But he would keep telling me, "Oh man, you got to get over that. You got to go get a hang out. You got to hang all the time. And he did, and he would drive. He would drive in his. He had several cars. At first, he had a few Lincolns, which looked kind of like those gypsy cab Lincolns that would. That look like an unmarked cab,
Yeah.
taxi, like a Lincoln, like a big black, like Ford
Town
or
car. Yeah.
Lincoln Town car,
Yeah.
exactly. And so he'd go, man, I was driving over here tonight, and somebody put up his hand for me to pick him up, and he was mad I didn't pick him up. So, but he would take that thing, and later he had a caddy. He told me once he had it, he got a royalty check from like Madonna or Beyonce or one of them, like sampling some riff of his from some of his old Boogaloo records. He said, I didn't even remember what the song sounded like, but she sent me $20,000.
Oh my goodness.
And he went out and like bought like a new Lincoln or something, with it. So
Well, Randy, we're gonna wrap it up in a sec or so, but I would love to do this again with you. I'm trying to
yeah,
keep. I just started this podcast. I have a lot more booked, and I'm keeping them shorter. But I would love to do this again with you. I mean, you're someone I've looked up to for such a long time, and I do hope I get a chance to come down to Myrtle Beach and take a lesson with you or something, or get to hang in person. So
yeah,
just
let me know when you come with your fiance. I got a guest room, and there's a bathroom on that side of the house that only you would get to use, and you're welcome anytime. And I'll see you soon, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, man.
Let me know how the when the podcast comes out. I'd like to see it.
Oh yeah, it'll be up soon.
Okay.